Hello and welcome to the Cybersecurity Insider, episode 26. This is Yigal Behar, your host. And today we have another guest with me. Let me add JC. JC is here. So, welcome. Please tell us
Thanks.
who you
Thanks for having me
are.
on the podcast.
My pleasure. So tell us about yourself a little bit, so people, the viewers, can know who you are and what you do, what you did a little bit, and then we'll get started.
Yeah, great stuff. Thank you. I'm JC Gillard. I'm the founder and managing director of Corix Partners, and we're a boutique management consulting business and a thought leadership platform based in London, in the UK. And that's a business I set up about 10 years ago when I left Rabobank, where I was the chief security officer for the 10 years before that. In short, we've been working with large organizations since then, mostly with cybersecurity strategy, organization, and governance challenges. And that's me really in a few sentences.
Okay, that's excellent. Okay, so let's jump to our next item, which is the current issues that your customers are having. Well, what's the big problems that they have out there?
Well, it's not a big surprise. The last couple of years have been dominated by the COVID pandemic. It's no big deal. We're facing, if you want, we're dealing with two different type of customers broadly. We're dealing with those who have had a maturity problem for a long time and are waking up to the fact that cyber attacks are a reality and that they're happening relentlessly, that the COVID has made them more dependent on digital services. And obviously they need to do something about it. And they want to do something about it. If you want this is now a matter of leadership imperative to address it. We've got those type of customers. And we've also got customers who have been involved for a long time in a variety of cybersecurity programs, more or less working or not working as it happens. So customers who have been aware of cybersecurity for a long time, some of them for the best part of the last 10 or 20 years, and I've been working on it in some way or another, and are now again. It's a matter of leadership imperative to get things done. But if you want, the two different groups of customers are coming at it from different angles. Some are effectively waking up to the problem for good or for bad, and some others are waking up to the fact they have not been dealing with the problem in the right way for the best part of the 10 or last 10 or 20 years. So that's roughly where we are. The COVID has obviously opened the eyes of lots of people at management level, at leadership level, around the fact that cyber is a reality, cyber attacks are a reality. They are dependent on digital services, and cybersecurity is a pillar of that. So they are waking up to it, they are accepting it. But essentially, it's a matter of getting things done now, and it shifts the storytelling, if you want. It shifts the line.
Okay.
That's what we are seeing in short at the minute, mostly with large organizations, but I'm pretty sure small organizations or smaller organizations are bound to be in a similar sort of situation, in the sense that we've seen cyber attacks affecting all types of businesses, large and small, in all corners of the world. So it's not really
An option.
cyber attacks or data breaches or ransomware attacks are not the privilege of large firms, far from.
Well, it's not exactly the smaller one, but typically the smaller ones, even though you can say that the bigger ones also suffering from the same thing, and nobody can hide anymore behind under a rock and say, "Oh, it's not going to come to me. I'm small. I don't have any value." And this is keep coming. A lot of business owners that say, And I'm talking about small business owners. Like if, let's say, they have 10 computers or 50 computers or 100 computers, say, but we're a small company. Who might want to come and take my information? There's no value in my information. Well, it's not exactly because they don't understand where it can go, and they don't understand. And once you bring the cloud, and everything is get a bit more messy than it was before.
Well, I want to come back to what you said about there is no value in my information.
Right.
That's what many small businesses think, and they may they may be right. They may be, but the value is that this information helps them run their business, and that's exactly the sort of segment the ransomware people are targeting, because they're just hijacking your data. They don't. Some of them will care about your data because they can resell it and they can make money out of it, but many of them will just care about you paying the ransom. Frankly, they paralyze your business. If you don't get your data back, you cannot operate. You've got your customers waiting. You've got your own brand and your own business to save. And if you don't pay the ransom, at least that's their logic. If you don't pay the ransom, you can't operate, and you die. You stop working. Okay, and that's what they're banking on. They're banking on the fact that you're going to pay the ransom, irrespective of the actual value your data may or may not have in real terms. The data has value to you because it will run your business and operate your business and serve your customers. And most ransomware gangs are relying on that, on the fact that you're going to pay the ransom, irrespective of the actual value of the data. Sorry, I'm being disturbed now. We may have to cut that, Yigal.
That's okay. You can
It
sip your
happens.
coffee
It
or your
happens.
water. It's fine.
It
You can.
happens. It happens.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Um, I'm just trying to give you the other side of the, because I know you're consulting. I myself a consultant by not like making a choice to be a consultant, but I become a consultant like you, and then you find yourself with the questions that for you it sounds strange that people will ask those questions. Of course, what do you mean? Of course, you need to do. There's no question about it. But for them, there's a question because it's always about expenses, and now they need to borrow more expenses that they want to have. And then when they say, "Listen, if this is going to happen to you." You're going to be out of business. Customers won't come to you. You're going to lose the revenue that you are not making because of this ransomware attack. Reputation, right? And then all the legal fees, bringing somebody to clean up all the mess that you could avoid a little bit or make it smaller than it is now. And it's going to cost you more. So I said, okay, when it comes, I'll handle it. It's fine. I don't need to do anything. But then you can save much more over the course of the year for 3 years, because I had the same issue with another customer. So this is kind of things that happening. And so with that, I want to go to the next item, which is, I hear it a lot, but I want to hear it from you. How do you start or restart a cybersecurity program? So they know, like people come to me and they said, we need to do something. We need to do all those things. And yeah, we need to do MFA. How do you get them and you guide them, or would they say holding their hands and escort them with their journey, right? Because it's a journey and it's something that, and we're gonna touch it. Like there's another piece of it. So, how would you you get a call from a CEO, says, "Oh, we need to do something." Well, what would be your response?
My first response, if you want, my first line of response would be to try to understand the actual background in which the realization is taking place. And I know I'm going to give you an answer to your question, which is a straight answer, but it's a bit of a, it will sound maybe to some of our listeners like a little bit of a theoretical answer, in particular when it comes to small organizations, because I know small organizations would expect a practical, a tangible answer a question like this one. And I'm going to go off. I'm not going to go off a tangent, but I'm going to give you a bit of a theoretical answer first. My first approach to answering the question is really to understand what is behind it, if you want. What I would tell a CEO or CIO approaching me with this question is always, the first thing you need to do is to own the problem. Really accept it. Accept that cybersecurity forms part of your business and the way your business needs to run, and accept it as a dimension of your business. It needs to be owned. Okay. Do not approach the problem as something which is somebody else's problem, something which is an IT problem, something which you want to make disappear, brush it under the carpet or give it to someone else to sort out. Don't approach it looking for a magic answer, because there is none. Approach it as something which forms now part of the way your business needs to run and the environment in which your business needs to operate. Approach it with that logic, and you will start to see it under a different light. Okay? And that's the first thing. Of course, once you reach that point, the next stage is to understand the level of maturity you're at. And it will involve some form of maturity assessment, for no better word, to understand exactly where you are. And I'm always saying that because cybersecurity didn't appear overnight. It didn't appear with the COVID crisis. It didn't appear with ransomware. Okay, cybersecurity good practice started to be drafted, 20 to 25 years ago. The good practices, which still form part of current cyber good practice and which are the backbone of current good practice framework, those good practices, they still protect you. If you do the basics right, you will achieve a degree of protection, even against a degree of compliance with regulations. Okay? So fundamentally, cybersecurity is not something new. So understanding where you are, if you're waking up to it today, is an important point. I talk to CIOs very often, and they tell me, "Oh, we are rubbish at it. We do nothing." Okay, and invariably, I tell them the same thing. Stop. Take a step back. It's impossible for any organization today to do genuinely nothing about cybersecurity. Okay, so it's about understanding where the maturity is, and it starts with some form of maturity assessment, understanding what you're doing, what you're not doing, what you're doing well, not so well. Invariably, you will have things in place. You will have firewalls. You will have antivirus. You'll have suppliers doing this or that. It's about understanding that pattern in relation with your business and what matters to you, and the different levels of maturity across that spectrum. And that has to be a starting point. I do not believe that there are any genuine green field out there around cybersecurity. It's all about understanding what you're doing, what you're not doing, the functions you've activated, the functions you haven't activated. If you're using Office 365, for example, Microsoft has added an enormous quantity of features around security, privacy, and compliance. Okay? You will have some of those turned on. Whether you know it or not is another matter. Okay? So it's all about understanding that context. And once you understand that, figure out what you want to do in relation to the threats you're facing. But the starting point has to be first acceptance, acknowledgement that this is real, that this is part of business, ownership, figuring out who internally is going to own it and drive it. The objective being not to make it somebody else's problem, not to try to make it disappear, not to try to give it to someone else to sort it out, but really to find a way internally within the organization to make it happen, and then figuring out without complacency where you are in terms of maturity, what you're good at, what you're not so good at. I hope I've answered your question. It's a long answer, I think.
No, it's a long answer. It's okay, because I want the viewers also to hear it from another person aside me, because I can say that and people would listen and then say yeah. But if another person says whatever you say, and like we we understand it, both of us, then maybe other people would also take the same approach. I'm hoping. So, but not only come to your point that CEO needs to take ownership, they really need to support it. Board of
Yeah.
directors need to support and understand that cyber is very important, and it's not becoming, it is, when you said pillars, usually cyber is considered to be IT, but cybersecurity is not IT. It's not IT. It's something else. Yes, it's
It
related to
cannot be.
computers. What?
No, I was just saying it cannot be just IT. IT is just
No,
one dimension.
yeah, no, but they said that
We know it. We've known it for a long time.
yeah, but they how people see cyber, they see it as a part of IT, which is not, because it's a different specialty.
Yeah.
It's like if you go to and so let's say you go to the doctor, a general doctor, who said, "Oh, you know, I have a problem with, let's say, with your heart or with some specific item, organ in your body." You're gonna go to that specialist. The general doctor may know general things, you know, the basics, the basic fundamentals, but he won't be able to address your specific issues because he doesn't have specialty. And to be an expert in something, you need to devote maybe all your life in order to get to a mastery in whatever you do. So this is kind of the things that we see in our when we encounter either existing business or new business customers, and they think that cyber is part of IT, which is not. And for that, you mentioned it as something as magic, and I want to touch that point because, and then we're gonna touch the next item. So, you know, in our prep call, you said, okay, we said it's cyber is not, you know, 1, 2, 3 steps, and I'm done. And I want to expand a little bit about that, and is to explain that cyber is not something that you start at one point and you end in one point, and not necessarily that it's so easy, because everything is more complicated than it used to be. And this is because all the added services that you mentioned, Office 365, that and some security features on by default, yes, some of them, those security features will be disabled because it blocks them to do certain things that you want them to do. But it's already enabled, like MFA, it's already enabled by default, for instance. Also Google did that just recently, that you need to enable, MFA is enabled by default. Um, but then why it's not magic? Right? We understand it's not a magic. We understand it's a process that you need to do, and you need to repeat it time and time and time again. So why it's not magic? Why it's not 1, 2, 3? Why I can't just, you know, insert patches and I'm done, or enable MFA? We're telling you to enable MFA. That's it. I enable MFA, so probably I'm fine. So what is that they need to do?
The key is really to think about the protection from cyber threats as something you need to activate in layers. There is not one layer of protection which is going to protect you absolutely against all forms of threats all the time. If you think about ransomware, there are lots of people out there who are telling you, oh, this is just about awareness. This is about training your staff. What you need to fight ransomware is a fantastic program to train your staff so that they're not going to click on the links. Well, of course you need that, but that's not enough, because you will always have malicious content coming through, and you will always have people under stress and so on clicking on it. Then you've got other people saying what you need about ransomware is upstream filtering of your emails so that the bad stuff doesn't come in. Of course you need that, but we know those tools have never been perfect, and eventually something comes through. Other people will tell you what you need from ransomware, the absolute silver bullet against ransomware, is patching. What you need to do is to apply security patches in a timely fashion, and you're protected. Well, of course it's important, but in reality, across a large, complex estate, there are always good reasons why you wouldn't patch this or you wouldn't patch that. Okay? And that's what I mean by defense in layers. In reality, to protect yourself against ransomware, You need to act at all those layers and probably a number of other layers. Okay, but there are many vendors out there trying to push obviously their product and their solution as being the one silver bullet that is going to protect you. And those things simply don't exist. Life is more complicated. Technology is more complicated. The modern enterprise is more complicated than that. You need to act at a number of layers, layer upon layer upon layer to actually achieve a degree of protection. Just relying on one of those layers and just relying on frankly, I was going to say the bullshit, and I might as well say it, the bullshit of some vendors is not
You can
going to help.
say, you are allowed to use
Technology.
a little bit, I would say offensive, but you are allowed to use a little bit more colorful
I mean it in
terms.
I mean it in, well, anyway, no, I don't mean it in a nice way. I mean it in the way it's intended, frankly. And I'm just saying this because it's all too common. You need to understand that this only defense in layer and defense in depth will achieve a degree of protection against the current threats in the enterprise. That's the only way. That's the only way.
I can't say that I don't agree. 100% agree with what you said, and people expecting that, okay, you can't depend on layers, and we call it the onion protection. So you have like an onion, you have layers. So security, it's about layered, and it's a layered security. They have different names, but they mention it in different contexts. So food is one of the ways how to explain it, because onion, if you eat onions, I love to eat onions. I don't know if you like to eat onions. I think it's very healthy anyway. Cooked or not cooked. And you have layers there. And this is the best way how to explain that in a simple words that anyone can understand, that is not in a technology field like us. You need layers, and you said patching is not sufficient, and sometimes you can't apply all the patches because you have compatibility issues. Something can break. Anything can happen. So patching is one thing. You can say it's a layer. Yes, it's a layer. And then MFA, yes, you need MFA. Yes, you need user training. Not always they're going to do whatever you're telling them, but at least you increase the awareness. And this is where we are. So if we were in point A and we want to go to point Z, we have few points to go over there in order to get there. So you need to start. Yes, it might not be perfect where you are, but the objective is to be better in the next 12 months, to be better in a better place in terms of your security and layered security. This is the way. The onion approach is the best way to go. So that was exactly to the point. And I want to move to the supply chain, because any company these days is considered to be supply chain. And I don't know if supply chain is really described what's actually happening these days, because Microsoft Office is also a third party that gives you services. You're dependent on them, right? You had an Exchange on-prem. You took your Exchange, you migrated everything, all the mailboxes. Now your email now is being served by Microsoft. They are now becoming your third party. Or you're using any Citrix, or you're using any kind of cloud service, they are third parties to you. So anybody is in the supply chain, and especially with MSPs, the managed services providers, because they are maintaining the IT, internal IT, but they're also maintaining cloud infrastructure as well. And I'm not sure that MSPs or even the customer understand cloud to the point where cloud is a wild west. And this is my theory. I mean, you can disagree, you can agree. I think the more cloud services, the more vulnerabilities we'll see. Because, and I have a lot of stories about cloud services and how those are been affecting everybody. And I don't remember because I'm in this industry since the 2000, and I haven't seen so many events on a daily basis occur, let's say, back in, since 2000, let's say, to 2005 or 2010. Okay, you had the code red, you had blue red, you had all the, yeah, you had some events, yes, but they didn't happen on a daily basis. Now you experience it every day. You hear about health organization got ransomware. This one got hacked. The government got hacked. The CIA, the FBI. Nobody's. They said, "Oh yeah, but the FBI was hacked. The CIA was hacked." Okay, so why you, as a small company, do you think you'll be able to survive an attack? Like, this is a joke. So, what's your take about supply chain and MSPs?
Well, first of all, I think it's a very complicated question, and to be honest, I'm not totally sure I've got a full and definite answer to it. There are different layers, and it does, how can I say, it does compound a number of problems organizations have, in particular large organizations. If you look at situations like the SolarWinds or the outbreak, or SolarWinds breach, or the Log4j stuff earlier this year or last year, this is challenging organizations in terms of really understanding their estate, knowing their estate. If you're hit with the Log4j stuff, the first problem you have is to understand where you've got it. To understand that and to be able to react quickly enough means you need to have a degree of visibility, a degree of knowledge of your estate, which is already at a certain level of maturity. Many large organizations don't have it. Smaller organizations, it's bound to be worse, I think. Okay, so that's the first problem: knowing your estate to a level which allows you to deal with those type of problems, as opposed to just waiting for something to happen. Frankly, like the vendor to release a patch or this or that. That's one thing. If you don't know your estate well enough, what can you do? You cannot do anything. You are either going to be breached, or you're going to wait for a patch to be released, and then you'll do what you can to deploy it. You'll keep your fingers crossed, hope that nothing happens in between. Okay, you may be hacked, you may not be hacked, you just don't know. That's not very reassuring, is it, from a business perspective? Okay, and I wouldn't like to be the CISO who has to go and see senior execs and tell them that sort of story. But it happens. It happens every day to CISOs, because, as you said, we have never seen such an accumulation of cyber attacks. So that's one line of answer to your question. The other line of answer to your question about the cloud also challenges organizations, because behind the cloud you've got something called shadowIIT, and the fact that in many organizations, the business, frankly, has been building up their own processes, their own relationship with suppliers in the cloud, frankly, because very often they didn't have a very good relationship with the corporate IT. And very often they felt the corporate IT was unresponsive, and they went out and did their own things. Because at the same time, of the last 10 or 20 years, of course, the cloud business has been building up, and lots of services have emerged. In one typical case, if you want, of what we're talking about here, is what has been happening to the HR industry over the past 20 years. When I was working 20 years ago, the HR department was in-house, and they were dealing with stuff in-house. They were using the in-house email. They were storing files and CVs and stuff like that, and medical records in-house on servers. But they were getting such a bad treatment from corporate IT that when the likes of Taleo and all those guys came along, they thought it was fantastic, and they just went for it. And with that, all the personal data, sensitive stuff, and all the CVs and all that, and all the HR business, for no better word. Okay? And that's absolutely typical in my experience of what's happened, in a number of support functions in that instance, but also in the business. And you need, again, to have a good grip on your organization to understand where this has happened or where that has happened. Otherwise, how do you deal with it? You can't. Okay. And this concept of shadow IT has been, frankly, everywhere for the best part of the last 10 years, in my experience. So it makes dealing with the supply chain problem extremely complicated, because now something happens out there. Your data is out there, you can be hacked or your data can be hacked, but you don't know where it is and you don't know where to start unless you have a good grip on what's been happening around all those things. So to me, it's a very complicated topic because it does challenges organizations at this level. Okay. What have you been doing over the last 10 or 20 years to actually deal with it? Do you know where you are? Do you know what sort of estate you're dealing with? Do you know where your data is? And otherwise, what can you do? I'm not sure I've answered your question, but I've tried.
Was muted. Kind of. But I think that shadow IT is another aspect because of all the cloud services and because corporate IT didn't have the understanding or didn't have the time or didn't put any priorities on the request of the employees of the company, and then they need to go and find solutions in order to solve their problem, their business problem, in order to function. Okay. I know you mentioned digital transformation, and just what's that? What is it? Digital transformation. Is it like something new, or is this something that's happening? What does it mean for organizations, for anybody, smaller one?
Well, that we can spend the entire podcast on defining digital transformation. Okay.
Well, in more respective to the cybersecurity, I would say, because then we want to look at the digital transformation, through that microscope that is the cybersecurity. So it's the cybersecurity eyes to look about digital transformation and the impact on digital transformation. But maybe a little bit, I can give my own explanation, but I want to hear what do you say about the digital transformation? What's that?
I'm going to give you different elements of answer here. When I spoke about digital transformation earlier, I was mostly talking about what's happened to some organizations around the COVID crisis and the fact that they have had to shift their operations onto a digital platform because the physical platform on which they were operating before wasn't available anymore, wasn't working anymore, wasn't able to deliver services to their customers anymore. That's what I meant. Broadly speaking, digital transformation, from my perspective, if you refer to what's been happening over the last, say, 5 years, is really challenging information security in a number of ways, or cybersecurity in a number of ways. But I want to stress that digital transformation didn't appear with the smartphone. It didn't appear with IoT or with the blockchain. Okay, to stick to a few buzzwords. Digital transformation has been affecting industries for the best part of the last 20 years since the advent of the internet, to be honest, and maybe to an extent before that, depending how far you want to go. Okay? To a large extent, the introduction of mainframe computers in the 60s and the 70s was some form of digital transformation. Okay, we could go on and on like that. So there are aspects of the digital transformation phenomenon which are incremental, the internet being one aspect of that, and there are aspects which are a bit more disruptive. But if you look at the travel industry, for example, the travel industry was first disrupted by the internet. Okay, if you go back 25 years ago, 25 years or 30 years in the past, there was we used to buy holidays in corner shops. We used to go to shops to buy airline tickets, or we used to phone some sort of call center somewhere, and they would issue a ticket for us. Okay, and then all that business shifted online. And then people have been buying holidays and booking rooms and buying airline tickets online. And now the travel industry is, well, pre-COVID at least, now the COVID is affecting them in all sorts of different ways, but the travel industry pre-COVID was moving towards another level in terms of digital transformation in the shape of, providing virtual reality experiences or augmented reality experiences, so that you can experience what the hotel room will be like, or what the cruise ship would be like, whatever you want to do. Anyway, just to give an example here, there are aspects in the digital transformation which are incremental. There are aspects which are a bit more disruptive. Undoubtedly, the neobanks have been disrupted, mainstream or high street banks in a way which is very, very, very disruptive. But then at the same time, it doesn't make sense, for opening a bank account to take 2 weeks and 3 visits to a branch. Doesn't make any sense. Okay. So anyway, I'm just saying that when you talk about digital transformation, you need to understand the complexity of it. There are aspects which are incremental, aspects which are disruptive. You need to keep all that in perspective. With regards to cybersecurity, for me, the digital transformation challenges cybersecurity in the sense that it challenges the way the enterprise deals with technology, fundamentally. Okay, and historically, cybersecurity has been seen as part of IT. It's been attached to the CIO, and it's been evolving in that sphere, for good or for bad, because we said earlier that it's not just an IT problem, and we know that. We've known it for a long time. It's not just an IT problem. It has a big IT component, but it's not just an IT problem. So even structured within the portfolio of the CIO, cybersecurity had to be able to branch out towards the business, towards support functions, and so on. Anyway, now with the emergence of the digital transformation, very often it's the business that has taken the lead. Okay, and in many organizations, you see the business driving the digital transformation and owning that new tech. And you see the traditional role of the CIO and the traditional role of the CTO evolving sometimes in different directions compared to the role of the CDO, for example, being a chief data officer or chief digital officer, depending on the type of business you're in. And the role of the CISO, the CISO, is often trapped in the middle. Okay, and that is, in my view, what is most challenging about cybersecurity. Where does it go? Okay, how does it need to evolve? It's been historically structured in IT in the traditional portfolio of a CIO. Now you have a CDO emerging next door, very often with good business acceptance and a good momentum behind what they're doing, because they're opening new business channels because of new tech and so on. How do you make the transition from a security perspective? How do you organize or reorganize cybersecurity to match the reality of that new enterprise in its digital transformation effort? And that, I think, is the main challenge I see. Okay, because to be honest, very often the CIOs end up being the guardians of the legacy stuff, and all the new tech ends up in the portfolio of the CDO. So you do have dynamics in large organizations which are not always extremely clear, which are very often quite political, to be honest. And the risk of cybersecurity being trapped in the middle is in its traditional sense, in its historical sense, is a problem. So in many cases, I've ended up advocating, to push the problem up. Okay, because very often you also have a number of other things happening in the organization. In particular, when the digital transformation is driven by a more aggressive use of data. I say aggressive in a good way, not necessarily in a negative way. A more how can I say, a use of data which is going to help the organization.
You have more data. You have more data.
You have more data, and you want to use it more because you have more data. I don't mean aggressive in a bad way, but you have more ability to use more data, and you want to do it to grow your business. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, but of course, in parallel to everything we've been saying, and personal data is increasingly becoming more and more valuable and more protected, by all sorts of privacy regulations around the world. Okay, not just GDPR in Europe, but also a number of equivalent legislations in the US popping up state by state. So fundamentally, it makes a lot of sense to start pushing the problem up and to start seeing privacy and security at large, spanning all different type of IT and tech environments, and structuring that as the portfolio of one executive, in a way of reshaping the role of the CISO, if you want, and pushing it up. I don't know if I'm explaining myself very clearly, but I'll let you come back into this because I've been talking for a while again.
I'm here. I'm listening to you, and I'm trying to let's say understand, but try to get it. So from my own perspective, yes. So I agree with you that digital transformation is like using another term. It's like in the old days we said information security, and information security transited to be cybersecurity, but actually it means exactly the same. And I think it's better to use information security because information can include anything. Or you can say cloud security, or you can say anyway security, because the information is all over the place. And shadow IT and the digital transformation, as we mentioned again, COVID pushed them, all businesses, to now working from home, which brought in more threats to any organization, small or large. And as you said earlier, digital transformation is here for so many years ago. So it's like nothing new about it. It just now they're using it as a marketing tool, and not exactly is to describe something else or explain something else. It's just another marketing, like APT, active persistent threat. And one company brought it as and used it as in its marketing. I don't want to mention names. Actually, they were breached as of last year, just to give a clue. And again, this is a marketing, but actually everything is making sense. So what I would like to and I think you touched it, how you go and you do digital transformation, and who's going to drive it, who's going to own it, who is actually, so as you said, the CIO probably will own the legacy systems, but then they gonna have fights with that person now that is going to drive the digital infrastructure, such as digital infrastructure, I would say. And now you need to connect the data points, so either to import or export the data and use it in a different ways. And now they're going to have fights about it, and who is going to own it, which going to cause and you said it's politics here, which is going to cause more problems to any organization.
Yeah, I was going to say, you cannot allow the digital transformation to happen without some form of security component in it. And this is why you need to be very careful about where you position the CISO and their role, and how you evolve it as your organization transforms. Because technologists are trained and incentivized to deliver on functionality, to deliver on speed, to deliver on functionality, and so on. They're not to deliver on cost for some of them, but they're not incentivized to deliver on control. They're not trained. It's not their mindset. They're not trained to deliver on security. Most technologists are trained to deliver on functionality.
Features.
And
Features and
features. Yeah, that's it.
capabilities.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it's a fact in my experience
It's a
that it is the
reality.
way their mind. It's reality, and they are trained and incentivized in that way. So that's why you need to have a security structure to be embedded in your digital transformation effort. And if you leave the traditional role of the CISO in the portfolio of a CIO who is gradually pushed aside transformation because that's driven by a CDO who's doing things directly with the business and so on, that's a problem. So you need to find ways of disentangling if you're in that situation, You need to find ways of disentangling the role of the CISO and figure out how they can be active in whatever the CDO is doing. And you will have to twist your organization to make that happen. And in large organizations, politics are a factor, and you have to be aware of those. And that kind of transition has to be driven from the top down, because bottom up, it just won't happen. Sideways, it won't happen. There are too many silos and too many interests here, too many crossed interests, if you want, too many crossed wires potentially. It won't happen by itself. It will have to be driven top down, which is why I've ended up recommending in a number of situations, to push it up. And you push it up in security, digital security, information security in its traditional sense. You could aggregate privacy into this, you could aggregate resilience, you could aggregate business continuity, and you end up creating a meaty portfolio which you can give to a serious executive, and you can push that up to the top of the pile and make it report to the board, or to a COO of some descriptions, or to a CEO if you want, if you make it big enough and you have a big enough to carry it. Of course, you need to find the right person. You need to incentivize that person at the right level with the right package and so on and so forth. But that's another matter. Okay, so that's a little bit the way I'm seeing it. You cannot let digital transformation happen without security inside it, and you need to understand how you can make this happen in relation to where you are in terms of organizing security across the organization. Sorry, I'm off the time. I'm going off time again. Yeah.
Yeah, I think information. Where is the information? Well, shadow IT came from bottom to top because they needed some answers and they need some solutions, and not necessarily, as you mentioned earlier, the IT, the corporate IT, would help them to do that. And now they need the solution, and they can't wait. So they do Dropbox because they need to exchange files, large files, with an outside vendor. So until the IT set up an FTP server, and until you grant them the access, and how they're going to pull the information. Oh, now you need to put it in the DMZ. Oh, now the DMZ. Okay, now you need to put the information. It's becoming complicated, but if you use Dropbox, even you pay a few dollars for an account and you are unlimited in terms of the storage space, it's going to be quick. You do it now, you finish with it, you send information to your graphic designer, and he has access to it. That's it. It's done. Game is over. Um, I, I had another case with a customer who said, I just want to exchange some information with the vendors. Like I want to share with them information. Do you have like a quick solution for me? And he's the IT manager. So I said, listen, you have already access to our cloud. I'll give you, and you have that. You can use that in order to share the files. It was very quick. He was so happy about it because you resolved the issue very quickly for him. So imagine this is happening in a business unit where you need to resolve the issues right away.
Yeah.
I think information should be owned regardless where the information is, to simplify it a little bit, because now you make it complicated, is to say all the information, wherever the information is, should be with the responsibility of one person or two people that will oversees that and make sure that security is actually implemented regardless where is the information, whether it's on the cloud or on-prem or, I don't know, on the moon. They need to own that data. They need to be the data custodian, and they need to handle the information. Now, if you have a business requirement, so they need to move quickly. CIO and CTOs have been, say, upgraded to some extent, because now they need to understand business. They need to understand marketing. They need to understand sales. They need to understand customers, how they do. So they need to be more business savvy than they used to be, just only focusing only on technology, focusing only about the information. Now they need to see how that information will be used, how that technology can be used in order to enable better business for our company.
I just want to go back to the Dropbox story, because
Okay.
to me, this is as old as Dropbox itself. This is as old as Dropbox. I had those problems 10 years ago, close to 12 years ago. I remember having those questions on my desk. Okay. And the problem from a CISO perspective, the problem is capturing that problem, capturing that requirement. The problem is making sure that question comes to your desk or comes to some form of security person. Okay, that's the main problem. If we capture it, we can deal with it. There are lots of ways of dealing with it. So it's one thing to use Dropbox without a password. It's one thing to use Dropbox with a password, with a strong password. There are alternatives you can use. There may be different ways, very simply, to exchange the file, etc., etc., etc. And the file may be sensitive, the file may not be sensitive at all, and we could go on and on. If we capture the problem, if the problem comes to the desk of a security professional, then we can deal with it, we can educate, we can find the best solution, we can assess and help the business achieve its objectives. But we have to capture it. And that to me is the main issue. And it means, obviously, having built the channels and a level of awareness sufficient for the people in the business who have that problem to know where to go and to be willing to go there, not to be scared, not to think that they're going to be pushed aside, not to think that they're going to have to wait for two days before an answer comes back, and those kind of things. So it's about building the relationship and the channels with your business so that your business is not scared to come to you because they know they'll get some form of answer. And that in itself is a genuine management challenge, in many organizations. Okay, but that's the background in which you can start solving these problems. If your Dropbox problem comes onto the desk of a security professional, be dealt with, and there are many ways of dealing with it in a secure way. If it doesn't, then it becomes a matter of understanding why and what you need to do to make sure in the future it does get referred to security person. That's the way I'm seeing it, if you want, because this is not a difficult problem, okay, and it can be solved, and there are many different ways of solving it, and it may not be a problem at all. The file may not be sensitive at all. It may not be a problem. Okay, you may end up telling the guy, "Fine, put it on Dropbox. Who cares?" Okay,
but the problem is, so here's an I'm saying an answer, but a counter to what you just said. You can say, yeah, if it's not sensitive, put it there. It's no problem. However, if one day he decides to put something that it's not sensitive, which is sensitive,
exactly,
and share it with another person from another organization, you really don't have any control what they do. Once you give that permission to do that, now you have a big problem. Now you have a bigger problem.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's got to be done in the context of a particular type of relationship between the security function and the rest of the business. Okay?
But people are different. People are different.
Yeah.
Once they get the permission, they're gonna abuse it. We know that. And this is an issue. Not to mention now that even if that information is not sensitive, you still have a problem with something that is connected from outside to your internal computer. However you want to say it, yeah, you have a strong password, you have MFA, you have everything, and then because that cloud can be breached, don't forget it. Nobody is safe under the sun. You can say, hey, but this is really a remote issue. Yeah, it may be, but remote issues happen on a daily basis. So now, how can I differentiate between all of those cases? It's probably impossible because you have, every little thing, and now you need to distinguish between every little thing, and it can be done in big organizations, and you need to give assessment right away. You need to give them answers. They're not going to wait for you.
Yeah, but we're going to go back to the concept of defense in layers, frankly, because the answer to your question is, if you're concerned about the usage which is being made of your Dropbox, then monitor it. Okay, and which is essentially a way of saying, well, you put an additional layer on top, whereabout you are somehow going to check what is happening. Okay, and you have to plug that into a process where about not only you're going to be collecting data about what is or isn't happening on your Dropbox or any kind of file transfer system you're using, but then somebody is going to review the anomalies, deal with the anomalies, and process the incidents or the
Right.
meaningful
Or you
events
can,
when they happen. Because it's not
or
just
you,
about tools, it's also about process.
right. And it's a good point that you said, okay, you need to monitor, but also you can isolate it on a different machine that it's not going to impact all the computers on the network. So so there are, some creative solutions here that both of us can bring and solve a problem and give them what they need and get over with it.
This is it. This is it. If you do the key again, and that's the essence of what I was trying to say. The key is for the security team to capture the problem. If they capture the problem, they will find a way of solving it. There are many ways of solving it. Okay? Many ways of solving it in a way which remains secure and in a way which satisfies everybody. Okay?
Right.
There may
Right.
be compliance requirements on top. We haven't mentioned that. We haven't spoken a lot about compliance. But
Oh,
there may be
compliance. Yeah.
compliance
Yeah.
requirements on top.
Yeah, you mentioned it earlier, the GDPR and other compatible compliances in the US for each state. Yes, like California that have a compatible GDPR. You have New York State also that they have a little bit more, say, aggressive. Also Connecticut, they have some cybersecurity compliance over there for different industries, for specifically for the financial industry and insurance and money transmitters and all of that. So yes, I mean it's another topic by itself. So let's talk about your clients a little bit. Who's your best clients? So they come to Corex.
Uh,
Why?
our best client, um, our best client is an incoming CIO, an incoming head of risk, an incoming head of compliance, who comes into a new organization, looks around, and says, "What on earth is going on around cybersecurity?" And that's our best client, to be honest. They come to us and we help them figure it out. In a nutshell, that's our best client,
They are
and
coming
that
because
happens.
I'm sorry, they are coming because they have a self-awareness about cyber because it's a new CEO and now he feels that he need to touch that. He comes with this awareness, or he came to a new company to manage it and suddenly discover, oh, what's going on here? There's a huge mess in here. Well, how do they come with that awareness to
It's
begin
mostly a
with, or they
matter of
develop that
they come into a
awareness?
new job, they look around. Yeah, no, they come with that awareness or a degree of awareness to begin with, probably something they developed in other jobs. Then they come in, they pick up a new job, they look around, they see things happening around cyber, but they don't really understand what's going on, and they need help around framing it, making it happen, and making it work for them. Sometimes there is a CISO, sometimes there is no CISO, sometimes they're not comfortable with the CISO they've got. Sometimes the CISO has just left. Sometimes there are 250 people running a cybersecurity project, but nobody can give them any form of indication on what this is about and what they're delivering. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you start to see the sort of situation in which we are called in. That's typical. I'm exaggerating a bit, but that's typical about the
No,
sort of situation in which we're called in.
that's okay. Okay, so I think we almost coming to almost like the top of the hour. So in closing, we discussed a lot of things. We touched a little bit compliance. We touched a little bit about your clients, digital transformation, supply chain, MSP. We talked about how to get started, what they need to do. Would you say like it's a risk assessment that they need to do in order to, and this is what you're saying, to do risk assessment to understand who is what, where's the data, documenting the data, where is the data, so have some sort of visibility to the data. We talked about monitoring. We talked about how to mitigate some, drawbacks we mentioned, and how to monitor and actually isolate it and have a little bit more control, even though it's a shadow IT. Um, and I think we touched in this hour we touch a lot of stuff. There's also probably more things to talk about, as always, because our prep call was
Yeah,
also was long enough also.
yeah,
So what's
yeah,
your
that was a good chat.
yes, definitely. And I mean this conversation and the power conversation last week also was a good one. Um so in your closing, what do you have to say? Like, you know, the floor is yours, as we say.
Well, I enjoyed that conversation a lot, and yes, we have gone in all sorts of areas, but I think it makes sense, and I'm comfortable it will flow well for for our listeners. Um, I'm to as a conclusion, I really want to go back to what we said at the beginning, frankly, in terms of ownership and and also something we said later in the discussion in terms of the importance of some of those things being driven top down. I think for the past 20 years, cybersecurity has been driven bottom up or sideways. Very often, you hear people talking about, oh, we need to bring this up to the board. Okay, we need. You see questions online or articles about, how often is the board kept informed about cybersecurity and all this. I think the real challenge the industry has is really to turn the table on this. It shouldn't be happening in that way. At board level, there are more and more people asking themselves the question, what's happening here? What is this about? They should have the courage really to own up and to drive and to say, well, okay, fine. This is our problem. This is a business problem. We're going to own it as a business problem and drive it as a business problem. And the minute you start doing this, you're going to see dynamics changing. And I think that's the real challenge for me the industry has to move away from the historical bottom up dynamics, which frankly have not worked very well in large organizations. Otherwise, they wouldn't be breached day after day. Okay? Uh, and start focusing more on the top down sort of dynamic, more business oriented, more business centered, driven top down by the board or from the board or from the executive committee, and driven towards the business, not just towards IT. I think that's the main challenge the industry still has, if you want my view. It's hard, but it needs to be done. That's what I would say in conclusion.
Okay, that's perfect. So we are now finishing. We came to a little bit more than an hour. It says hour and 2 minutes. So really enjoyed the conversation with you, JC. Hopefully we'll meet again. I don't know, sometime. I know both of us, we have busy schedules. We need to meet the deadlines and so forth, which is fine. And we do this as a kind of to help the community out there with our conversations, raise awareness, bring things that from the dark for the darkness to get some light, shed some light on some of the topics that we talked about, and it was very good. So with that, we're gonna finish it. And as always, thank you for watching. This is the Cybersecurity Insider. My name is Yigal Behar. Thank you for watching this session with JC. And if you like it, please like it. If you don't, it's fine. Share it on your cybersecurity risk assessment. Do whatever you need to do in order to be better. And I wish you healthy and be safe out there. Thank you very much for watching, and we're going to stop this session today. Thank you very much.